Another day, another rumour of more Disney live-action remakes on the horizon. Because who doesn't like to see even more childhood classics relentlessly butchered by the House of Mouse in pursuit of yet another payday and a bump up of the numbers on Disney+. I know, right? I can't wait either. So yeah, coming off the back of The Little Mermaid, which was okay, and Pinocchio, which was an abomination, and Peter Pan and Wendy, which we do not talk about here, we've had some reports of further live-action adaptations in the works. Now, these reports, they could be completely bogus. They could mean nothing at all, or just be false trails, whatever. You know how these things can go. But since we already have confirmation that there seems to be no end in sight to these films anytime soon, with Snow White coming up, and Lilo and Stitch and Moana both confirmed to be in the works at Disney as well, oh, and a Lion King prequel, because more expressionless lions is exactly what the fans have been clamoring for. I mean, I guess I can give them a pass for this one because of the ridiculous box office success of the first film. What, it grossed like 1.8 billion or something like that? Yikes. Yeah, I get it, money talks. But yeah, that simply leaves us with the fact that more of these films are definitely coming. Some of them being remakes of films that came out in the last decade, so not much time between the releases. Seriously, how are we getting a Moana remake this soon? But anyway, reports have indicated that we may also be seeing remakes of The Princess and the Frog, which originally released in 2009, and Tangled, which came out in 2010. So not old films at all, especially by the standards of Disney, which manages to keep characters from films made in the 30s and 40s as relevant as ever. So already the hackles were up for me, because I think that these films do have the potential to truly end up being among the worst attempts at a Disney live-action remake ever produced, with very little potential upside. Okay, so yes, the upside. We'll start with that, shall we? They are decently popular, I guess, and so could potentially have a pretty decent performance at the box office. I mean, the original films, they both grossed a couple $100 million each. Yep, $594 million for Tangled, which is pretty good for a pre-Frozen era Disney. Because after that, we did start to see a lot of absurd numbers starting to crop up, $1 billion plus grosses. You know how it is. And then we have The Princess and the Frog, $271 million, which is not as high, but it is what it is. And regardless, I think both films have the potential to move the needle at the box office. Not hugely, as I do kind of think in terms of prominence, they are on a lesser tier in terms of popularity than some other Disney films. I mean, I love them, don't get me wrong, just in terms of their position in pop culture compared to some of the classics and stuff like Frozen, probably not as high, you get me? But they still do have the potential to do quite well at the box office. And on top of that, I think Princess and the Frog is a pretty unique sort of story. It's not in your standard fairy tale world. And I think it has the most interesting setting to put to screen, as it's not some generic kingdom in some generic fantasy land. It's a real life setting, and a real life cultural background you can explore. And to me, that makes it a lot more anticipated and interesting, compared to another European-style royal fantasy, which is exactly what Tangled would end up being. And I guess I just don't see how that's going to be intriguing in any way, shape, or form. On top of that, Tangled's whole shtick is about the hair. The famously expensive hair that blew the budget for Tangled into the stratosphere. Like, how the hell are they going to make that look good in live action? Make that look real, but also still look fantastical? It's just, the idea of that appearing in live action's making me feel stressed. Those poor filmmakers. Like, do you try to do it as a practical effect? Would it be CGI completely? A mix and match sort of situation? And if so, how much is that going to cost? Because seriously, whilst these things have, I guess they have a decent enough budget, at the same time when you watch them, I don't think that budget's really going into the visuals all that much. They're not really that impressive. Usually there is ways to get around that sort of thing, and they often do that through use of lighting. If it's darker, you're not going to see the shitty CGI quite as clearly, and the effect can be maintained. That being said though, the whole vibe of Tangled is being bright and colourful and exciting and magical. And the magical hair effect literally glows with golden light. So there's no hiding the hair. So therefore you're going to need to see all those strands of glorious golden hair. And I just don't know if they can do it convincingly. Or at least convincingly enough for the prominence the film's going to have. I can accept poor effects from some film studios, but not a money-hungry studio that rakes in the dough like Disney does. And so my major fear is that the visuals for this are going to suck, and the hair would look hokey and ridiculous. Plus, the original just oozes charm. I just don't see how you can replicate that without it starting to seem stupid and cringy. And these remakes are always trying to set themselves apart from the rest in a major way, which in my opinion, always just ends in tears anyway. Also, how are you going to do the horse, Maximus? The dude has so much charm and character, but have you seen a real life horse face? They're not full of expression. Having your leading man having a rivalry with an angry yet expressionless horse doesn't sound like a very compelling story. It sounds like something pretty stupid, hokey, and ridiculous. And that being said, the actual scenery, that would be cool. You know, if nothing else, Disney live action movies, they always look beautiful in terms of the landscaping and the sets, just not much else. And that's just Tangled. Princess and the Frog seems ripe for issues as well. In a different world, I'd love to see this remade. It's an underrated classic for sure, but the main problem, almost the entire movie, Tiana and her love interest, they're just frogs. And with Disney often going down the path of more hyper-realistic animals in these things, rather than the original cartoonish vibes, it's just going to look terrible. There's nothing I want to see less than two green tree frogs romancing each other and kissing each other, for like 2 hours straight, because that's another thing. These films, they somehow pull out an extra 40 minutes right out of their ass to slap onto the runtime. And that's 40 minutes of nothing. It's just filler. It's just boring. And you can really see them doing that for Princess and the Frog, whether it's through extending the villain's backstory unnecessarily or more unnecessary prologue stuff with Tiana's dad to make you feel worse when he dies. It'll get there somehow. And so that's what we're staring down the barrel of. A longer film than necessary, filled with expressionless frogs and a firefly as your lead characters. What could go wrong? And yeah, like I said, the CGI, it's going to look like ass for these things. How do you make a firefly that looks not stupidly ridiculously out of place in cartoonish, but also not looking like a freak? I have not Googled what a firefly's face actually looks like in real life. And I'm honestly not going to do that because I've seen close-ups of like spider faces, and it's just not for me. Bugs are freaky. So yeah, no thanks. And so in the end, despite having a story that I think would be fun to see retold on the big screen, Princess and the Frog would need to rely so heavily on CGI. CGI that in these sort of films has historically looked pretty bad outside of The Lion King, and even if you got that Lion King budget, the frogs would just look like frogs. There's no interest for me there. And when you look at The Lion King compared to the original, it doesn't have the same impact because the animals are just animals. It's not the same. They don't have those beautiful emotive faces like the original cartoons did. And yeah, this is just another idea for me that's dead on arrival. I just don't see how you can possibly make this one work. And so in the end, I have to ask, why? What's the point of making these beyond a quick cash grab? The more they make, it seems the worse they get. So let's just stop, Disney, stop. I'm begging you. And so with all that being said, that's the end of the video, and I would like to remind you that these are just my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of remaking these two films? Are you with me? Are they gonna suck? Maybe you disagree. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.